Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel where today we'll be talking about the 2025 NHL entry draft. I know that's a lot of months away. What is it? Almost October. I don't know. It's a lot of months away, but I don't know. I'm a fan of a pretty bad team or a team that's projected to do pretty poorly this year. So, I got to get excited for it. Got to have something to look forward to. So, yeah, today we'll be talking about my top 10, my very early top 10 for this draft. A lot of these guys haven't even started their season, so I know this is very early, but all these guys played last year, and some of them played at pretty high levels as well, and in pretty good leagues. So I think we have a good rough idea of where everyone will be going, but obviously a lot changes throughout the year. Before we start, a few things I've noticed from this draft class in general is that, well, one, I don't think it's as good as last year or 2023. I think it's significantly worse than 2023 for sure. There's not a ton in terms of, I don't know, guys that could be like the best player on our team. There's no, I don't want to say there's no franchise players in this draft, but if there is, there's not going to be more than one or two probably. Where in 2023, if you have Leo Carlson, Fantilli, Bedard, all of those guys are probably going to be the number one players for your team. Last year we had Celebrini, Demidov are probably going to be the best players on their team, or like franchise defining players. Well, we probably won't see more than one or two of those in this draft. So, but there's lots of good complementary players here. And another thing I've noticed is that this is a pretty big draft class. Like, there's only one guy in my top 10 who is below 5'11", and all of them, like, even if they are shorter, they have pretty big builds, like pretty solid builds. Like 190 pounds or so. The smallest player is the guy who's going first overall. You can probably guess who that is, but other than that, they're all really solidly built, and all of them are decent skaters as well, which is impressive. I like that big build, that's super solid physically, but also a really good skater type player. So yeah, I'm excited for those type of players in this draft. But let's just get right into it. First overall, you know who it is probably. James Higgins, 5'10", 176 pounds. He is the smallest guy in this top 10, but most skilled, and everything he's done up to this point has shown that he will be a number one center in the NHL. He's an older player in this draft class. A lot of them are actually. A lot of these guys will be 18 in like September, October, November. Higgins has a November birthday, I believe, so he'll be 18 pretty soon, which gives him, I don't know, a bit of an advantage over his competition, but we'll see. He is an elite point producer. He had 102 points in 56 games with the National Development Program and 22 in 7 at the World Under-18s, which I believe broke Nikita Kucherov's record. But yeah, very impressive stuff at the international level from Higgins. That point producing talent will definitely be his biggest draw, and like his passing and his hockey IQ are very high. He is undersized and has definitely been outbattled in the corners at times. But one thing I have noticed from him is he has really good body position on the rush. He's very smart, and I think he'll be able to drive a line in the NHL. And he's shown an ability to completely take over games at times. So I think he has that 1C potential, that franchise player potential. My comparison, there's not a ton of great comparisons for him. I would say Jack Hughes is my closest, just because they've had very similar career paths, and I do think that's his type of game, like more of a skilled game, and producing points is kind of his specialty. Yeah, everything he's done so far has shown to me that he will be the first overall pick in 2025. I'd say his chances aren't quite as high as Celebrini, and definitely not as high as Bedard to go first overall. I'd say like maybe 85% at this point, but a lot can change throughout a season. But yeah, he's my first overall pick. Second overall, a bit of a controversial one here. Maybe not controversial, but a guy who has really risen up a lot of people's boards is Roger McQueen from the Brandon Wheat Kings of the WHL. 6'5", 190 pounds. Again, kind of like Higgins, he's one of the oldest players in the draft class, but honestly, it's so early this season that I'm not going to use that as a real factor in deciding these guys' draft positions. He's a really smooth skater for a big guy, 6'5". He's got maybe the best shot in this draft class, and he's really good when he's able to use that. He's a right shot center, and
I don't know if he plays like a power forward type game in the traditional sense, but he's kind of a new age power forward. You know, he uses that size to his advantage, powers through guys. He's shown the ability to be the best player on the ice at a lot of times. He looks so dominant in some of these WHL games. And I think in the first game of this WHL season, he had like 4 goals and 6 points. So he can absolutely take over games at times, but he needs to bring a more consistent effort game over game. He's also not really a factor defensively at all. So it's the things I'm hoping to see improvement with over this year. But yeah, I think he has real 1C, like 100-point potential. And yeah, for me, this good start to his season has him slotted in at the number 2 spot. Third overall, our first defenseman on the list is Matthew Schaefer from the Erie Otters. 6'2", 183 pounds. He just turned 17, so he's one of the younger players in this draft class. He's a very good skater with a solid shot from the point. He's well-rounded. He's pretty good defensively. His positioning hasn't been great at times, but I think that will grow on me. He really has another level to go offensively as well. I think he had like 20 so points in the last year in the OHL. I'd love to see him getting around that point per game mark. I'd say he's not like another level offensively compared to some of the guys, other defensemen in this draft class, but I think that like his hockey IQ is really good for a defenseman. I think that's what really takes him over the edge and what makes him hit my number 1 defenseman in this draft class. My comparison is kind of like a Josh Morrissey, but like bigger and better defensively, I guess. That's the kind of game I see him playing. A good transitional defenseman. Maybe not an elite number 1 defenseman, but definitely a top pair guy. He's not starting the season in the OHL because he has mono, which is brutal for a draft eligible player. You saw that with Timothy Liljegren a few years back. Yeah, that's who it was. Hopefully that doesn't ruin his season too bad. I really like him, and he was my best number 1 defenseman from this draft class, just based on what I've seen from last year. But obviously, this year has barely started, so we'll see. Number 4, I have another defenseman who is probably the most likely to take over from Schaefer as the number 1 defenseman in this draft class. It's Logan Hensler. He's 6'2", 196 pounds, another big guy. He's very smooth skating as well, and very prone to go on the rush, which is nice to see in a defenseman. He's a smooth skating guy. Like I said, he's a two-way defenseman. He impressed me at the U18s. Not crazy offensively, but you know he's very responsible. I think he has another level to go offensively. He's been on the rush so many times with a national development program. His highlight reel is really cool to see. But yeah, another thing about his game is he's just so solid defensively. His positioning is way better than Schaefer's, in my opinion, but the only thing is I think he has a lower hockey IQ, and sometimes his decision making can be, you know, a little bit questionable. Usually it doesn't get him into defensive trouble, but he would make him a lot. It would make him a much more effective player if he did get better decision making. He needs to prove a little bit more to me that he has that offensive potential, but I think he could be a solid top pair guy. You know, I think Rasmus Anderson is my comparison. Solid, like smooth skating guys, maybe like 50 points or so. For my 5th overall pick, it's from Sweden, Anton Frundell, 6 foot, 196 pounds. He's a high octane offensive forward. He's got elite passing and a really solid scoring ability. That's an underrated part of his game. And he might have the best hands in this draft class, right up there with James Higgins. But another thing that stands out with his game is that he's really good two-way guy. If you think like Konsta Helenius from last year, like he's kind of a similar player in that, you know, he's does everything really well, but I don't know if he'll be able to drive a line at the next level. However, it's early in the season, and he's shown an ability to produce really well in the lower leagues. So if he can really like step up and play well against men this year, I think he honestly could have a chance at going first overall. He just needs to show me that he has that high potential to be a number 1 center and drive a line instead of turning out like kind of like a guy like Anton Lundell, where you know he does everything at a high level, but you know he's probably never going to be a number 1 center. More of a number 2 guy who can play the penalty kill and the second power play, which, is still a fine player and still a good value at 5th overall, but we'll see if he has another level to go. At number 6, I have a player who most people are projecting at 2nd overall, and that's Porter Martone. 6'3", 196 pounds, a new age power forward. He's extremely talented, very good with the puck, especially in tight, but he's also very physical and has a good power game to him. He's shown an ability to use his size to his advantage, which is good to see in a young player with like that sort of frame. He's a solid playmaker, but I'd say he excels much more as a goal scorer. A very high IQ for him too. He definitely needs to be a better skater. I think it's held him back from kind of dictating the play a bit more. He hasn't really shown me that he'll be anything more in the second liner. He's producing pretty well in the OHL, but I think he'll be more of a complementary player. However, he seems very NHL ready, and a lot of teams like that in with their top picks, a guy who can contribute immediately, be a good leader, and there's a lot of tools to like with him. He just needs to unlock that next level. At number 7, easily the best Russian player in this draft is Ivan Ryabkin. 5'11", but a very solid 201 pounds, a Russian center. He's got extremely high hockey IQ. I'd say maybe the best in the class, maybe just behind Higgins. And he's really got a knack for scoring goals. He's a good playmaker, but he just finds a way to score from anywhere, which is a really cool trait to see in a player. He's a strong skater, and his work ethic is very good. He's engaged defensively. He needs to work on his positioning in the defensive zone. One good trait from him is that, a lot of the high-level Russian prospects, like, I don't know, Kaprizov, Michkov, Demidov, they're all wingers. Ryabkin is a center, and he's shown that he's a really good center, a really well-rounded center. Plus, he's got that classical Russian, like, winger-type skill, so I think that's a really nice blend. He'll have a chance to prove himself because he's already got into, I believe, 2 KHL games. So if he spends a lot of his time in the KHL this year, I think that could really rise his draft status. At number 8, a player you've likely heard a lot about in recent years. It's Michael Misa, a 6'1", 185-pound center, an exceptional status player from Saginaw, right? Yeah, Saginaw. But yeah, he got exceptional status a few years ago. Looked like he might be, I don't know, the next generational talent. He hasn't really shown too much of that yet. He's been good, but I would say he's in no way been like the exceptional player that we all expected him to be. He's a playmaking specialist. He's got good hockey IQ, and he's maybe the best skater in this draft class. He's so agile on his skates and really good in the straight line. I'd like to see him a bit better at 5-on-5 because I've seen he's kind of relies on the power play for his production, and he needs to give a more consistent effort in the defensive zone. He also needs to get stronger. Like, for a 6'1" guy in the OHL, he kind of gets body off the puck a little bit too much. Potential is through the roof with this guy, but we'll see. He's still putting up big numbers. I think he had like 80 points or something like that in the OHL. Very good for a draft minus 1 year, but we really need to see that exceptional status player come through because, that's not a good sign on prospects where they kind of stagnate their progression even before they've made the NHL. Teams are scared of that, and I don't think Michael Misa will be a high-level draft pick and be a number 1 center in the NHL unless he really proves himself this year. At number 9, a Swedish defenseman. I always botch his name. It's Sasha Boumedienne, I believe that's how you say his name. Probably not, but anyways, he's 6'2", 183-pound defenseman. Smooth skating, two-way defender like all of the defensemen in this class, it seems. He's got a great shot from the point and very good physical tools. He's tall and lanky, and he really uses his body well, especially in the defensive zone. But he's definitely shown inconsistencies at times, and his decision-making can be very questionable. I think he has number 1 D potential, though, but he'll really need to prove himself. He is playing at Boston University this year, which is nice to see from a draft-eligible player. He'll be competing for the number 1 D spot on that team, too, with guys like Tom Willander and Cole Hudson. If he can have like a kind of year like Zeev Boyum did last year, I think he could be a really good pick. And at number 10, the last player for this video, I'm going to completely screw up his name. But Jacob is Wozniak. I can never. I don't know. I need to find out how to pronounce his name. But he's a 6'3", 185-pound winger from Sweden. He's been a really polarizing prospect for me. Like some games, he's looked really great, and he's been, I don't know, even a complete player. Like a lot of the games, he's very engaged defensively as well. He has really good hands in tight. I also think he's a pretty strong skater for his size. His stance looks a little awkward, but he actually gets around pretty good. But some games he just seems almost invisible, just not really contributing anything at either end of the ice, and that needs to change if he wants to stay in this top 10. He's good on the rush, and I like his hockey IQ. I think that's one of his better traits, but it's not really there when he's not engaged. Like he needs to be skating and having the puck if he wants to be an impact player. He's been a good producer for the Swedish U20s, though, so I'm hoping that's a sign of good things to come from him. But yeah, this is a polarizing guy. He could end up in the top 5 in this draft, or he could fall out of the first round pretty easily. So we'll see what we get from him. But yeah, that's my top 10. Is there any players I missed? Any players you would like higher or lower? Do you have a different pick for first overall? That's going to be a controversial debate. But yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll see you in the next one.